Jake Morrison stood in the huge round room where the Galactic Council met every day. The room was bigger than any building on Earth. Strange lights hung from the ceiling that was so high he could barely see it. Around him sat creatures from across the galaxy. Some looked like giant birds with metal wings. Others were made of what looked like living crystal. A few were just balls of light that spoke through machines. Jake had been Earth's main speaker for 3 years now. He had seen this room many times before. He had watched these same creatures argue about trade deals and wars and borders. He had helped them solve problems they could not fix themselves. But today felt different. Today, he was angry. The Zephyrian delegate had just finished speaking. The Zephyrians looked like tall blue humans, but with 4 arms and no hair. Their delegate was named Crixnal, and he had just told the whole council that the recent attacks on human colonies were not important. He said they were just part of how things worked in space. He said humans should accept that some of them would die for the good of everyone else. Jake felt his hands close into fists. 3 human colonies had been attacked last month. Pirates had destroyed farms and killed families. Children had died. The council had ships nearby that could have helped, but they did nothing. When Jake asked for help, they said they were busy with more important things. The crystalline hegemony representative spoke next. She was made of purple crystal, and her voice sounded like breaking glass when she talked. Her name was Shalthin, and she said the attacks were good for humans. She said it would teach them how to be stronger. She said humans should thank the council for letting them learn from being hurt. Jake looked around the room at all the faces. Some were faces he could understand, like the Altarians, who looked almost human but green. Others were so strange he still did not know which end was the head after 3 years. But he knew what he was looking for. He wanted to see if any of them cared about what had happened to his people. The Altarians would not look at him. Just 4 months ago, they had begged humans to help them stop a war that was killing millions of their people. Jake had worked day and night to get human soldiers and ships to their world. Human men and women had died fighting to save Altarian cities. Now the Altarians stared at their green hands like they had never met him. The depths dwellers were no better. They lived in the oceans of their worlds and looked like giant squid with too many arms. They breathed water instead of air and had to wear special suits in the council room. For 2 years, their trade ships had been attacked by pirates every week. Human patrol ships had fought off the pirates and kept their trade routes safe. Hundreds of humans had been hurt or killed protecting depths dweller cargo ships. Now they studied their tentacles like they were the most interesting things in the galaxy. The Vorthan High Chancellor spoke up from his place at the center of the room. The Vorthans looked like trees made of crystal and metal. They were old, very old. They had been in space longer than any other race except maybe the Ethereals. The High Chancellor was called Zekmar, and he was bigger than the other Vorthons. His voice boomed through the room like thunder. "Human Morrison," he said, "your species makes too much noise about small problems. Every meeting you come here with complaints. Pirates attack everyone. Disease kills everyone. Natural disasters hurt everyone. This is how life works in the galaxy. Accept it." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Small problems. That is what they called the deaths of his people. Small problems. "Chancellor," Jake said in a quiet voice, "in the past 3 years, humans have solved more problems for this council than any other species. We stopped the Altarian Civil War. We cleared the Kepler trade route of pirates. We found a cure for the Red Death that was killing the crystalline hegemony. We built the defense systems that protect this very station. And we are grateful," said Crixnal the Zephyrian. "But gratitude does not change facts. Humans are new to space. You have been part of this council for only 5 years. The rest of us have been working together for thousands of years. We know how things work. You do not." Jake looked at him. The Zephyrians had asked humans to design their new warships just last year. Human engineers had worked for months to create ships that were faster and stronger than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. Those ships had won a war against the Scorched Worlds faction in just 3 weeks, instead of the years it would have taken with old Zephyrian ships. "We know how to solve problems," Jake said. "That is why you keep asking us to solve them for you." Shall Thin, the crystal being, made a sound like wind chimes breaking. It meant she was laughing. "Solve problems? You mean you know how to fight and build things? Any species can do that given enough time. You are useful, but not special. There are billions of races in the galaxy. If humans disappeared tomorrow, we would find others to do your jobs." The room went very quiet. Even the constant humming of the air systems seemed to stop. Jake felt every eye in the room watching him. Some of the faces showed curiosity. A few showed what might have been worry. Most showed nothing at all. Jake had heard rumors about this attitude before. Other human diplomats had told him that some council members thought humans were too eager to help. They thought humans were like young dogs who would do any trick for a pat on the head. They thought humans needed the council more than the council needed humans. "Any species can do what we do?" Jake asked. "Of course," said Zekmar, the Vorthon Chancellor. "Fighting and building are simple skills. Even primitive races can learn them. You think too highly of yourselves." Jake nodded slowly. "I see." He touched the communication device on his wrist and sent a coded message. It was just 3 words, but every human in council space would receive it within the hour. The message was simple. "We are done." "Very well," Jake said out loud to the room. "If that is how the council views humanity's contributions, then perhaps it is time we looked at our participation here." Several delegates shifted in their seats. The Altarian representative finally looked up from his hands. The Depths dwellers stopped studying their tentacles. Even some of the stranger creatures seemed to focus on Jake more closely. "Empty threats," said Chancellor Zekmar. His crystal body flashed with colors that Jake had learned meant anger or disgust. "Where would your species go, human? You need us. Your people have nowhere else to turn. Without the council, your colonies would be destroyed by pirates within a year. Your trade would collapse. Your technology would fall behind. You would become nothing more than a minor species hiding on one small world." Jake smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a human made when they were about to do something that would surprise everyone around them. Jake had learned that most alien species did not understand human smiles. They did not know that humans had many different kinds of smiles and that some of them were warnings. "Do we?" Jake asked. He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the huge room. Behind him, he could hear voices starting to talk. Some sounded worried now, others sounded angry. A few sounded confused. Jake did not look back. He had work to do. Within 6 hours, every human diplomat would be packing their things. Every human engineer would be shutting down their projects. Every human soldier would be heading home. Every human trader would be closing their deals and leaving council space. The galaxy was about to learn what life was like without humans to solve their problems for them. 3 days after Jake Morrison walked out of the council chambers, the first real problem hit the galaxy like a meteor strike. The problem started at Kepler Station, a huge metal structure floating in space between 4 different star systems. The station was as big as a city and served as the main trading post for dozens of alien races. Captain Vexhigh was in charge of the station. He belonged to a race called the Void Runners, who looked like tall, gray beings with 6 arms and large, black eyes. Vexhigh had run trading stations for 40 years and thought he had seen every possible problem. He was wrong. The main power reactor that kept the station running began to make strange noises on Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the noises had become screams of tortured metal. By Tuesday evening, red warning lights were flashing in every Corridor and the radiation counters were climbing into dangerous levels. HFY stood in the reactor control room staring at displays full of human writing and symbols. The reactor was a human design called a fusion core. It was smaller and more powerful than anything other races had built before. It had run perfectly for 2 years without any major problems. Now it was dying and nobody knew how to fix it. "Get me Lisa Chen," HFY ordered his communications officer. Lisa Chen was the human engineer who had designed and built the reactor. She was a small woman with dark hair and quick hands who could make any machine work better than it was supposed. 2. For 2 years, she had kept the station's power systems running at 110% efficiency. The station made more money because of her work than it had in the previous 10 years. The communications officer tried for an hour to reach Lisa. When she finally answered the call, her face appeared on the main screen. She was packing boxes in what looked like an empty office. "Captain HFY," she said politely. "What can I do for you?" "The reactor is failing," HFY said quickly. "We need you here immediately. Radiation levels are climbing and we cannot shut it down safely." Lisa stopped packing and looked directly at the camera. "I'm sorry, Captain, but my contract with the Council was terminated 3 days ago. All human personnel have been released from their duties. You'll need to contact your local engineering guild for technical support." "But you built this reactor," HFY said. His 6 arms were waving in distress. "Nobody else understands how it works." "That's unfortunate," Lisa said. "The Council made it very clear that human contributions were unnecessary and easily replaceable. I'm sure your local engineers will figure it out." The screen went dark. Lisa had ended the call. HFY immediately contacted the Kepler Engineering Guild. They were a group of the best alien engineers in the sector. They arrived within 6 hours and spent the next 12 hours staring at the human reactor like it was a puzzle made by gods. "The quantum flow regulators are calibrated to human mathematical constants," said Chief Engineer Thorks. He was a crystalline being whose body flashed different colors when he was thinking hard. Right now he was flashing very fast. "We cannot read these control systems. The fusion chamber is designed around human physics theories that we do not understand." "Then learn," HFY snapped. "It would take years," Thorks replied. "Maybe decades. Human engineering is completely different from ours. They think in ways we do not." While the engineers argued, the radiation kept climbing. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Troy Blackwood was having his own problems. Troy was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. He commanded the human peacekeeping fleet that had been stationed on the border between 2 alien nations that hated each other. The hegemony and the free colonies had been fighting wars for 300 years before humans arrived. They fought about territory and trade routes and old insults that nobody could even remember anymore. Every few years, they would start shooting at each other again, and thousands would die. 2 years ago, the Council had asked humans to step in and keep the peace. Troy had brought 20 warships and 5,000 soldiers to patrol the border zone. For 2 years, there had been no fighting. Both sides respected human military power, and neither wanted to test it. Now Troy was loading his ships and preparing to leave. The last human transport was scheduled to depart in 6 hours. "Admiral," came a transmission from the hegemony flagship. The voice belonged to Admiral Kethron, a 4-armed warrior who had become almost friendly over the past 2 years. "Surely you can leave a small force to maintain the peace agreement." Troy looked out at the stars where dozens of hegemony and free colony ships waited on opposite sides of an invisible line. They had been waiting for 2 years for someone to make a mistake so they could start fighting again. "Admiral Kethron," Troy replied on an open channel so both sides could hear him. "The Galactic Council has made it clear that human involvement in galactic affairs is unnecessary. We are simply respecting that decision and withdrawing all our forces." "But without human mediators," began another voice from the Free Colony side. "Without human mediators, you'll have to solve your own problems," Troy said. "Good luck," The last human ship jumped into hyperspace at exactly midnight station time. Behind them, the two alien fleets began moving toward each other. The first shots were fired 17 minutes later. Within an hour, a full battle was raging across 3 star systems. Back at Kepler Station, things were getting worse by the hour. The reactor was now producing so much radiation that entire sections of the station had to be evacuated. 12 million beings lived and worked on the station, and they were all in danger. HFY tried calling Lisa Chen again. This time, she didn't answer at all. He tried calling other human engineers. None of them would take his calls. He tried calling the human embassy, but a recorded message told him that all human diplomatic missions had been closed. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "I've found a human engineering firm that might help us. They're called Terran Technical Solutions, and they're based on Earth." "Contact them immediately," HFY ordered. An hour later, a human face appeared on the screen. It was a middle-aged man with a beard who introduced himself as Dan Parker, owner of Terran Technical Solutions. "We heard about your reactor problem," Dan said. "Nasty situation. We can definitely fix it for you." "Excellent," HFY said with relief. "How soon can you get here?" "Well, that depends on the contract terms," Dan said. "Our emergency repair rate is 50,000 credits per hour plus expenses. We'll need payment in advance and full legal immunity in case something goes wrong. Also, since this is outside council jurisdiction now, we'll need to negotiate a separate security agreement." HFY's large eyes grew even larger. 50,000 per hour? That's 10 times what we paid Lisa Chen. Dan shrugged. Lisa worked for the council at council rates. We're a private company working in non-council space. Different rates apply. Also, our schedule is pretty full these days. Lot of stations having technical problems since the human withdrawal. We might not be able to get to you for 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks? HFY's voice went very high. The station will explode long before then. That would be unfortunate, Dan agreed. Of course, if you want to pay our emergency rush rate, we could probably move you up in the schedule. That would be 200,000 per hour. The screen went dark while Dan waited for an answer. HFY looked at his radiation monitors. They were now deep in the red zone. He had 12 million lives depending on him and no choice at all. "Accept their terms," he told his communications officer. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. When you tell people their work isn't valuable, don't be surprised when they start charging what it's really worth. 2 weeks after the humans left the council, the galaxy's economy began to fall apart like a house made of cards in a strong wind. The problems started small, but grew bigger every day. What began as minor trade disputes quickly became major economic disasters that spread from world to world. On Nexus Prime, the biggest financial center in known space, panic was setting in among the traders and bankers. The planet was covered in huge towers made of metal and glass where billions of credits changed hands every second. Now those same towers were filled with confused aliens staring at computer screens that showed numbers they could not understand. Marcus Webb had been the chief economic advisor for the Galactic Trade Commission for 18 months. He was a quiet man with brown hair and thick glasses who understood numbers better than most people understood their own names. Marcus had created the mathematical formulas that kept currency exchange rates stable across 47 different star systems. His work made it possible for a trader on one side of the galaxy to do business with someone on the other side without worrying about money problems. Now Marcus was gone, and nobody knew how his formulas worked. "The Altarian credit has lost 30% of its value in 2 days," reported Quintel, a tall blue alien who worked for the Trade Commission. "The Zephyrian standard is fluctuating so wildly that 3 major banks have stopped accepting it completely." High Commissioner Veltar was a crystalline being who had run the Trade Commission for 20 years. She had never seen anything like what was happening now. "Contact Marcus Webb immediately," she ordered. "Offer him whatever he wants to come back." "We tried," Quintel said sadly. His communication device has been disconnected. We sent messages to Earth but got no reply. Veltar's crystal body flashed angry red colors. Then find another human economist. There are no other human economists available, Quintel explained. They have all gone back to Earth or joined private human companies. The private companies are charging fees so high that only the richest systems can afford them. While the financial crisis spread across the galaxy, other problems were getting worse. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for years now faced constant arguments about cargo inspections, taxes, and shipping rules. Without human mediators to settle disputes, every minor disagreement became a major fight. The Cygnus trade route was one of the busiest shipping lanes in the galaxy. It connected 12 different star systems and carried everything from food to weapons to luxury goods. For 3 years, human coordinator Betty Stone had managed the route's complex schedule of ships, cargo inspections, and customs procedures. Betty was a small woman with red hair who could solve scheduling problems that made alien computers crash from overwork. Now the route was in chaos. Ships waited for weeks to get permission to dock at stations. Cargo inspections that used to take hours now took days. 3 different species had declared parts of the route to be under their exclusive control, leading to military standoffs and blocked shipping lanes. Captain Crow's High commanded a depths-dweller cargo ship called the Deep Current. His ship carried medical supplies that were desperately needed on 6 different worlds. He had been waiting at the Centauri Junction station for 4 days while alien bureaucrats argued about inspection procedures. "This is madness," Crow's High told his first officer. "When Betty Stone ran this route, we could make the complete circuit in 12 days. Now it takes a month just to get through one inspection." His first officer, a younger depths dweller named Secklin, studied their cargo manifest on his computer screen. "Perhaps we should hire one of the new human shipping companies." "Have you seen their prices?" Crow's High asked. "They want 3 times what the old council rate was, and they have waiting lists that stretch for months." Meanwhile, on the disputed border between the Scorched Worlds and the Depths Dweller systems, a new crisis was developing. The 2 species were natural enemies who could barely survive in the same type of environment. The Scorched Worlds beings needed extreme heat and dry air, while the Depths Dwellers required cool temperatures and high humidity. They had fought wars for centuries over planets that both species wanted. 3 years ago, human diplomat Kate Sullivan had negotiated a complex peace treaty between them. Kate was a tall woman with black hair who spoke 7 alien languages fluently. She had spent months working out detailed agreements about trade, territorial boundaries, and shared resource development. Her treaty had brought peace to a region that had known only war. Now Kate was gone, and both sides were eyeing each other with growing hostility. Council member Yithara represented the Depths Dwellers in the galactic government. She was an old being whose tentacles had turned gray with age and wisdom. She had lived through 5 major wars and knew the signs when another one was coming. Those signs were everywhere now. "The Scorched Worlds faction has moved 3 battle fleets to the border," she reported to the Emergency Council session. "General Pyrox is demanding that we abandon our mining operations on the thermal worlds." The thermal worlds were planets that were hot enough for Scorched Worlds beings to live on, but also had underwater areas where depths dwellers could survive. Kate Sullivan's treaty had established joint mining operations that benefited both species. The arrangement was complex and required constant human oversight to prevent misunderstandings. "Where is the human mediator?" demanded General Pyrox over the communication link. His voice sounded like burning wood, and his scaled hide glowed with barely contained heat. "The treaty says all disputes must be settled by human arbitration. Humans have stepped back from galactic affairs," Yithara replied carefully. Her species' complex emotional language made it hard for the translation computers to work properly. "The Council is handling all mediation now." "Then there is nothing to discuss," Pyrox declared. "The old agreements died with human oversight." We claim full control of the thermal worlds. Remove your people within 30 days or we will remove them ourselves. The communication link went dead. Similar conversations were happening all across the galaxy. Peace treaties that had required human negotiation were falling apart. Trade agreements that needed human oversight were being abandoned. Military alliances that depended on human coordination were dissolving. By the end of the third week, 7 different trade wars had started. 12 peace treaties had collapsed completely. The Galactic Defense Fleet was falling apart without human tactical coordinators who understood how to make ships from different species work together. Commander Zulkan was a Vorthan officer who had worked closely with human Admiral Patricia Hayes for 2 years. Patricia had developed the battle strategies that allowed the mixed species defense fleet to operate as a single unit. Now Patricia was gone, and Zulkan watched his fleet commanders argue about everything from formation, flying to weapon targeting. The Altarian ships cannot keep up with Zephyrian cruisers, reported Captain Hexdahl. The crystalline vessels move too slowly for proper screening formations. The Depths Dweller submarines cannot coordinate with surface ships. Zulkan's crystal body dimmed with exhaustion. What did Admiral Hayes do about these problems? She created adaptive formation patterns that played to each species' strengths, Hexdahl explained. But none of us understand how her patterns work. When we try to copy them, our ships end up flying into each other. On Earth, President Ryan Carter was meeting with his economic advisors in the White House. The reports they brought him were almost unbelievable. Human unemployment has dropped to the lowest level in 50 years, reported Treasury Secretary Lyndon Johnson. Private companies are hiring engineers and diplomats as fast as they can find them. We have trade requests from over 200 alien systems. Most interesting of all, added Commerce Secretary Bob Martinez, we're receiving applications from alien governments who want to hire human administrators to run their bureaucracies. Apparently, our people are the only ones who can make complex multi-species organizations actually work. President Carter looked out the window at the peaceful Earth sky. It seems the galaxy is learning what we already knew. Running a civilization is harder than it looks. 6 weeks after the humans walked away from the Galactic Council, the situation had become so bad that even the proudest alien leaders were starting to panic. The galaxy was burning, and nobody knew how to put out the fires except the species they had dismissed as unimportant. Council High Speaker Zalthon sat in his private chambers staring at reports that got worse every day. Zalthon belonged to the Ethereal Collective, one of the oldest and most respected races in the galaxy. His people had been exploring space when most other species were still learning to make fire. The Ethereals were pure energy beings who lived inside crystal shells and considered themselves superior to all physical life forms. For the first time in 1,000 years, Zalthon was forced to admit that his people had made a terrible mistake. How many systems have declared independence from the Council this week? He asked his aide. 7, replied Nixtal, a younger ethereal whose crystal shell pulsed with nervous blue light. The Outer Rim sectors say they can govern themselves better than we can govern them. 3 core worlds have stopped paying their council taxes. The Merchants Guild has threatened to pull out of all council trade agreements. Zalthon's energy form flickered with what might have been pain. What about the Kepler station situation? It exploded yesterday, Nixtal said quietly. 12 million dead. The reactor overload created a radiation field that will make the area dangerous for the next 50 years. 5 nearby systems have lost all their power grid connections. The High Speaker was silent for a long moment. When the humans were still with the Council, major disasters like this happened maybe once every few years. Now they were happening every few days. The Kepler explosion was just the latest in a series of catastrophes that were tearing galactic civilization apart. We need the humans back, Zalthon said finally. The words tasted bitter in his energy form. Prepare a diplomatic mission to Earth. Full honors. Take whatever gifts we can find. Tell them we want to negotiate. Sir, Nixtal said carefully. Our intelligence reports suggest that the humans are not suffering from their isolation. In fact, they appear to be thriving. Zalthon's crystal shell cracked slightly. This was not what he had expected to hear. The plan had been simple. The humans would struggle without council support, realize they needed galactic civilization, more than it needed them, and come back begging to be readmitted. Instead, the exact opposite was happening. The diplomatic mission took 3 days to reach Earth. The ship that carried it was the finest vessel in the Council fleet, a masterpiece of ethereal engineering that could cross the galaxy in a week. It arrived at Earth's solar system expecting to find a struggling human civilization eager for galactic contact. What they found was completely different. Earth's orbital space was busier than ever before. Huge construction projects were underway around the Moon and Mars. New space stations were being built at a rate that seemed impossible. Most surprising of all, the construction crews included workers from dozens of alien species who had apparently chosen to work for humans rather than their own governments. "Request permission to approach Earth," the ethereal captain transmitted. "Permission granted," came the reply from Earth Traffic Control. "Please proceed to Diplomatic Station 7. You will be met by representatives of the Terran Alliance." The Terran Alliance was something new. Before the Council withdrawal, Earth had been just another member planet with one vote out of thousands. Now it was the center of what looked like a rapidly growing coalition of worlds and species. President Ryan Carter met the ethereal delegation in a simple conference room in Washington. Carter was a middle-aged man with gray hair and calm eyes, who had been dealing with alien visitors for most of his political career. He knew how to read alien body language, and he could see that these visitors were desperate. The delegation included High Speaker Zalthon himself, along with representatives from 6 other major council species. This was not a routine diplomatic mission. This was the council leadership coming to Earth with their hats in their hands. "Mr. President," Zalthon began, his translated voice trying to sound confident. "We come to discuss terms for humanity's return to the Galactic Council." President Carter raised an eyebrow. "Return?" "I think there has been a misunderstanding, High Speaker. We did not leave the Council because we were angry or upset. We left because we realized we did not need you." The alien delegates looked at each other with expressions that ranged from confusion to alarm. This was not how they had expected the conversation to start. "Surely you cannot mean that," said Crixnall, the Zephyrian delegate who had been so dismissive of human concerns 6 weeks ago. "No single species can survive alone in the galaxy. You need trade partners, security agreements, technological exchange." Carter gestured toward the window where they could see the busy orbital construction projects. "We have trade partners. 23 star systems have signed exclusive agreements with the Terran Alliance. We have security agreements with 41 different worlds. As for technology, our research and development programs are advancing, faster now than they did in the previous 50 years. Commerce Secretary Bob Martinez entered the room carrying a thick folder of documents. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. President, but I need your approval on these contracts. The Rigel system wants to hire human administrators for their entire planetary government. The Centauri colonies are offering exclusive mining rights in exchange for human engineering expertise. And the Free Traders Alliance wants us to design their new space stations." Carter signed the documents while the alien delegates watched in growing alarm. The papers Bob had brought represented business deals worth trillions of credits. More importantly, they showed that humans were not just surviving without the Council, they were becoming the most successful independent power in the galaxy. "SCR. Point is," Carter continued after Bob left, "these past 6 weeks have been the most peaceful and productive period in human history. Our colonies are expanding faster than ever, our people are happier, our economy is booming. Why would we want to give that up to rejoin an organization that told us we were unimportant?" High Speaker Zalthon's crystal shell began to show stress fractures. Perhaps there were misunderstandings in our previous relationship. The Council values human contributions. We are prepared to offer significant improvements to your membership terms. What kind of improvements? Carter asked, though his tone suggested he was not particularly interested. Permanent seats on all major committees, Zalthon said quickly. Veto power over council decisions that affect human interests. Triple the standard member benefits package. Exclusive rights to certain trade routes. Carter leaned back in his chair and studied the desperate aliens before him. 6 weeks ago, these same beings had dismissed human contributions as easily replaceable. They had told Jake Morrison that humans were just another minor species that should be grateful for council membership. Now they were offering terms that would make humanity one of the most powerful members of their organization. You still do not understand, do you? Carter said finally. This is not about better terms or higher status. You had the most creative, adaptable, and resourceful species in the galaxy working for you, and you treated us like servants. When we tried to speak up about problems, you told us to be quiet and accept things as they were. Carter stood and walked to the window, looking out at the thriving human civilization below. Ships from dozens of worlds were coming and going from Earth's spaceports. Alien diplomats waited in long lines for appointments with human officials. The planet that had once been just another council member was now the center of galactic attention. When you told us we were replaceable, Carter continued, you taught us something important. You taught us that we could replace you instead. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence as the full implications of their situation became clear. They had not just lost humanity as a member species. They had created their most successful competitor. Ambassador Lisa Grant walked through the marble corridors of the Galactic Council building on Zentari Prime. Her footsteps echoed against the high walls decorated with symbols from dozens of alien worlds. She had walked these same halls for 3 years, always with the same result. Today would be no different. The council chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their assigned seats. The Zentari occupied the center positions, their blue skin gleaming under the bright lights. The Korath delegates sat to the left, their insect-like forms clicking softly as they communicated. The Altarians took up the right side, their tall, thin bodies swaying slightly. Lisa took her place in the back row. This was where human representatives always sat. Not because they were late to join the council, but because that was where they had been placed 50 years ago, and where they remained. Council Speaker Thylon stood at the center podium. His voice carried easily through the chamber. As he spoke about trade routes and mining rights, Lisa listened, knowing what would come next. The proposal from the human delegation regarding equal voting rights, Thylon announced, has been reviewed by the committee. Lisa straightened in her chair. She had spent months preparing this proposal. It was reasonable, well-researched, and fair. The committee finds that the current system works well for all members, Thylon continued. The proposal is rejected. No discussion, no debate, just rejection, as always. Lisa stood and gathered her papers. Around her, the alien delegates were already moving on to the next topic. None of them looked her way. This was normal. This was expected. She left the chamber quietly, just as humans always did. 3 systems away, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his cargo ship, the New Horizon. He was reading a message that had arrived through secure channels. The words were simple, but Jake understood their meaning perfectly. Operation Silent Dawn, Phase 1 initiated. Personal discretion advised. Family considerations priority. Jake read the message 3 times, then deleted it. He turned to his crew, all humans who had worked the Outer Rim trade routes for years. Change of plans, he announced. We're heading home. His first officer, Danny Walsh, looked confused. But, sir, we have deliveries to make on Kepler Station. Those deliveries can wait, Jake replied. Family emergency. It wasn't really a lie. In a way, this was about family. The human family. Dr. Amanda Wells finished her daily report at the research facility on Kepler Station. Around her, scientists from 6 different species worked on various projects. Amanda had been here for 4 years, leading the team that developed new medical treatments. Her alien colleagues respected her work, but they saw her as a useful tool rather than an equal partner. When she suggested new research directions, they listened politely and then did what they had planned anyway. When she made breakthroughs, they thanked her and took credit at the conferences. Amanda saved her research data to a secure drive and slipped it into her bag. Over the past month, she had been doing this every day, backing up years of work. Her work. "Working late again, Amanda?" asked Dr. Vorthak, a Zentari researcher. "Just finishing up some notes," Amanda replied with a smile. Dr. Vorthak nodded and went back to his own work. He didn't notice Amanda packing personal items into a small box. A photo of her family on Earth. A coffee mug from her university. Small things that made the lab feel like home. Tomorrow, she would not be here to make it feel like home anymore. On the mining world of Zarion 7, engineer Pete Collins received the same message that had reached Jake Morrison. Pete had spent 8 years on this dusty planet, designing systems that extracted rare minerals more efficiently than anyone thought possible. The Korath mining supervisor, Clack 7, treated Pete well enough, but Pete knew what the aliens really thought. Humans were good with machines. Humans were reliable. Humans did the work that others found too difficult or too boring. Pete looked around the control room. Every screen, every control panel, every safety system had been designed or improved by him. The aliens who worked here could operate the equipment, but they didn't really understand how it worked. "Clack 7, Pete called out. "I need to take some time off. Family situation." The Korath. Supervisor's compound eyes focused on Pete. "How long?" "Not sure yet," Pete replied. "Could be permanent." "Permanent?" Clack 7's voice carried surprise. "But you are needed here." Pete nodded. "I know, but family comes first." It was true in a way. Pete was thinking of his human family scattered across the galaxy, all receiving the same quiet message, all making the same choice. Colony Administrator Helen Brooks stood in her office on New Mumbai, one of the Outer Rim settlements. Through her window, she could see human families going about their daily lives. Children played in the streets while their parents worked in shops and farms. The message had reached her too, carried by a trader who claimed to be delivering supplies. Helen understood what it meant. After 50 years of service, patience, and quiet dignity, humanity was making a choice. She opened her personal files and began making arrangements. Transport schedules, supply manifests, housing records. Everything needed to relocate an entire colony of 12,000 people. Her assistant, Mary Kim, entered the office. "Ma'am, I've got the weekly reports from the council liaison." Helen took the reports but didn't open them. "Mary, how would you feel about a change of scenery?" "Ma'am? I mean really different scenery. Outside council space." Mary's eyes widened slightly. She had received her own message too. "I think that sounds interesting, ma'am." Helen smiled. "Good. Start quietly spreading the word. We're going on a trip." Captain Sarah Davis piloted her transport ship through the jump gate at Alpha Centauri. Her ship carried 43 passengers, all humans leaving their posts throughout the sector. They had jobs as technicians, researchers, traders, and teachers. All of them had been valued for their skills, but not for their voices. Sarah's passenger manifest listed their destinations as personal leave, family visits, and medical appointments. None of these were lies exactly. They were going to visit the extended human family, and after 50 years of being ignored by the council, they definitely needed healing. In the passenger compartment, former research assistant Tony Martinez sat next to retired engineer Carol Johnson. They didn't know each other well, but they shared something important. They had both spent years watching alien species benefit from human innovation while treating humans as useful servants. "Where are we really going?" Tony asked quietly. Carol looked out the viewport at the stars ahead. "Somewhere we can build something new. Somewhere we can be partners instead of tools." Back on Zentari Prime, Ambassador Lisa Grant packed her belongings in her small apartment. The council would continue its work tomorrow without giving much thought to the human representative who simply didn't show up. They might send a message asking about her absence, but they wouldn't worry much about it. Lisa had served as humanity's voice for 3 years, trying to gain recognition and respect for her species. She had failed, but not because she lacked skill or dedication. She had failed because the system was designed to keep humans in their assigned place. She sealed the last box and called for transport to the spaceport. Tomorrow, the council would learn what happened when the people who kept their civilization running decided they had better places to be. The exodus had begun, quietly, without fanfare or declaration. Humans across the galaxy were simply walking away from the system that had taken them for granted for 50 years. They left behind working machines, functioning systems, and research that had advanced alien science by decades. But they also left behind their knowledge, their innovations, and their willingness to fix what would inevitably break. The aliens would notice eventually. But by then, humanity would be gone, carrying with them everything the council had never bothered to truly value: